Good morning and welcome to session 6 of the Ability Center of Greater Toledo's ADA seminar, Promoting Housing Justice from Barriers to Full Community Access for People with Disabilities. Co-sponsored by the Fair Housing Center and put on as part of the Ability Center's Access Network. This session is a presentation of the Community Partnership Award winner, a Monroe Street Neighborhood Center for Bluff Street Village. I'm sharing a photo of Dr. Larry Clark, the project manager of the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center, accepting our Community Partnership Award. The Ability Center's Community Partnership Award is presented each year to an organization that partners with us to help fulfill our mission of making our community the most disability-friendly in the nation by increasing independence for people with disabilities, discovering true passions, and changing the community's perception of disability. This year, the Community Partnership Award goes to the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center for creating Bluff Street Village. In line with our seminar theme of housing justice, the Bluff Street Village project is designed to create high-quality housing for persons with annual incomes of less than $18,000. With help from community sponsors, the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center is building 20 tiny homes along Bluff Street. The project gives homeowners opportunities to build equity while transforming Bluff Street into a thriving, beautiful neighborhood. Not only does Bluff Street Village provide quality tiny homes for individuals with low incomes, the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center worked closely with the Ability Center to ensure that every floor plan used for a Bluff Street Village home is accessible to people with disabilities. For this wonderful project and commitment to accessibility, the Ability Center of Greater Toledo presents its Community Partnership Award to the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center.
On behalf of the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center and its Bluff Street Village project, we are very excited and pleased to receive the Community Partnership Award from the Ability Center. The Ability Center was one of our earliest partners as we planned the build out of the tiny homes on Bluff Street so that each house that we build will be completely accessible. We hope to have, in fact, the first fully accessible block in the city of Toledo. Bluff Street Village is designed to help very low-income people become homeowners. They will live in the house for 7 years, and then at the end of the 7 years, we turn the deed over to them, and they will have built equity. Our partnership with the Ability Center is just one of the unique features of building tiny houses, houses that are right-sized for single people and perhaps even couples. So once again, on behalf of the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center, thank you for this wonderful award.
Thank you, Dr. Clark and the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center for your commitment to accessibility and for working with us to create the Bluff Street Village in an accessible way. I'm going to turn this over to George Thomas from the Fair Housing Center to introduce Dr. Clark. And then we'll hear a presentation on what went into Bluff Street Village, what that looks like, and the good work that they're doing at the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And the Fair Housing Center is, again, really excited to be here and be co-sponsoring this really great seminar session. Just a quick intro for Dr. Clark is Pastor Larry Clark has been involved in housing initiatives for many years. He served as president of the Greater Toledo Housing Coalition. I certainly remember him in that role. And for 6 years, Larry was the executive director of the Toledo Metropolitan Ministries, an agency working for social justice, supervising 20 employees. From 2002 to 2006, he chaired the Citizens Review Committee for the Community Development Block Grant. Pastor Clark has a Ph.D. in sociology, an undergraduate degree in social work, in addition to master's degrees in divinity and education. He is an ordained United Methodist pastor who has served in urban ministry for 40 years. He also has years of construction experience doing plumbing, wiring, and construction on mission projects for 40 years. Pastor Clark, thanks so much for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, good morning. It's good to be with you all this morning. I'm excited about this opportunity to share about the Bluff Street Village project and give you a little history of that and let you know where we are now. I'm going to share my screen with you so that I can do a PowerPoint. Back to the beginning here. So Bluff Street Village was our dream for a street that is right next to Monroe Street United Methodist Church. The church is located on Monroe Street, right near the Ottawa River. It's about halfway between Upton and Auburn. This was a strip that at one time had lots of businesses on it. You might know where the railroad viaduct is next near Swain Field. And so we're just on the other side of the railroad viaduct from Swain Field. And our neighborhood is the Monroe Auburn neighborhood. As a church in the neighborhood, we feel that we had a responsibility to the community in which we are in. And so a number of years ago, the church created the Monroe Street Neighborhood Center, which is our 501c3 that operates basically out of the church, but of course has its own independent board and its own separate finances from the church. So as you look out of the church going toward downtown, this is Bluff Street. Bluff Street at one time had houses down both sides of the street, and it was a typical residential street. When we started working on the project, there was just this one building left on the street that you see there. The land bank owns that building, and it will be coming down shortly. It's in pretty bad shape. So we had an artist rendering of what the street could look like when it had houses fully on it. You can see the difference between an abandoned street and a street with houses on it. This is looking from Bluff Street back at the church. So you can see it's right next door to the church. The street that you see there that crosses is called Rosedale. Out of the church, then the neighborhood center runs a number of programs. In the summer, we have a freedom school for elementary and junior high students. The idea of the freedom school that was developed by the Children's Defense Fund was to enhance reading skills during the summer. And we've been doing that freedom school for a number of years. The neighborhood center has probably one of the largest food pantry and clothing ministries in the city. We've been serving about 100 families every week over the last 6 months. So there's still a tremendous need for folks to get food. You'll see here that there was a parking lot on Bluff Street. This parking lot actually belonged to the church, and the church donated the land to the Bluff Street project. It was the original parking lot for the church many years ago. So the first thing we had to do is clear that former parking lot and get it ready to begin building houses. So here gives you an orientation of where we're talking about. In the upper left corner, you'll see the church facility itself. Where the dot says project location shows the parking lot. Now this aerial shot was taken sometime before, probably maybe 5 to 10 years earlier, and it shows houses on Bluff Street. But by the time we began this project, there were no houses left on Bluff Street. All of them had been torn down because of abandonment. And so it was a street that needed some attention. So we again put a rendering of what it might look like if you had a street that had houses on it. So the objectives of the Bluff Street project was to reclaim Bluff Street for housing, to help in the process of revitalizing our neighborhood, providing housing for very low-income people, and then providing an opportunity for them to build equity. Low-income people almost never have the opportunity to build equity, and the number one way that people build equity in their country is through their house, by owning a house. We have been engaged with our neighborhood through a process that led to a master plan. We initiated this with the Untitled Design Collective. We held a number of neighborhood meetings. We went door to door and did a survey, and we developed a master plan for development of the neighborhood, which included Bluff Street as a central feature of that plan. It was approved by the Plan Commission and adopted by City Council. So we began sort of our pre-development phase in 2020. We had a unique process. We went to Bowling Green State University's architectural department and had students there involved in a charrette to design houses. And the winning house design was the basis for the houses that we are currently building. And it came from a student at Bowling Green. So we built our first two houses. They were completed in October of 2021. We are in the process now of finishing up 3 more houses, which we expect to be done around the end of the year. And then we're actually starting on house 6 now and hope to start on house 7 shortly. In the end, we hope to have 20 houses, which would make the street a complete street. So when it comes to the selection of the tenants, they need to be low-income singles or couples, or it could be a parent and a child. Since the houses have no bedrooms, we're under the rules of fair housing, which says that we can't have more than 2 people in the house. The tenants have to be screened for suitability to live in a small house and have a demonstrated income between $7,500 and $18,000. We expect then that the tenants become members of the Tenants Council. And when they become homeowners, we hope that they will continue on with the Homeowners Association. We also are expecting the tenants to give 10 hours of service time per month, a way given back to the community. And we will provide workshops for them to assist them with life skills, as well as what the tools they need to repair and manage a house. If you've been a renter all your life, you haven't developed probably some of the skills necessary to be a homeowner. So hopefully at the end of 7 years, when they become the owner of the house, they'll have all the necessary skills to take care of their property. So the houses are 400 square feet. So one of the issues you run into in the city is that traditional lots are no longer large enough to build a house on. And so usually if you're going to build a house in the city, you have to have 2 contiguous lots to have enough square footage to meet the requirements to build a house. By building a small house, you can come close to meeting those requirements. Believe it or not, even on a traditional city lot, a 400 square feet house is still a little bit over the proportion that's supposed to be there, but we have gotten variances to allow us to build the houses. The houses have a complete kitchen, refrigerator, stove, sink, cabinets, and a complete bathroom, which has a zero clearance shower, so that someone with a wheelchair or difficulty stepping over the traditional lip that's on a shower has access to the shower. We have washers and dryers. They have cathedral ceilings, which make a big difference. The houses seem much larger than you would think for 400 square feet. They are fully barrier free. There's no steps anywhere. Wanted front porches. If you look at old neighborhoods all had front porches, and people used to sit out on their porches. And that was one way you got to know your neighbors. When we moved to the back deck, I think that led to a loss of sense of community. So we hope that people will make use of their front porches. Their houses are all electric, both heating and cooling. It costs us about $75,000 to build a house, and that's when we get donated labor and materials. We have a relationship with Tenants Career Center, and they are doing most of our carpentry work for us. The students there frame the houses, and they come in and do a lot of the finish work in the houses. And so the value of their labor is probably $25,000, maybe even, or $20,000, maybe even a little more than that. So to build these homes, we're going to need about $1.75 million. We have raised all the money. We won't build a house until we have the money raised. We don't want to finance the houses. One of the troubles that a lot of the community development corporations Toledo had was paying back the financing and managing the houses. By having them paid ahead of time, we're avoiding some of the problems that the community development corporations had. So this was the conceptual rendering of the house by the student at Bowling Green State University. I showed a couple pictures of it. One of the things we wanted to do is make sure that garbage cans had a place. And you'll notice that the garbage cans are in the back of the house in a designated location. And we build that into the lease. We've found that in other small housing developments that sometimes the garbage cans are laying around. This is the footprint of the house. You can see in the front, there's a porch. You enter the front door and you're right in the large room, and there's no divider. It's all one large room with a kitchen area, sort of the living area in the middle, and then the bed at the far end, and then the bathroom. And then also in the back of the house, they do have a patio, so that they do have a private outdoor space as well. And we took that same design and we gave it different roof lines. So there's one, there's a different one, another one. And so that each of the houses look different, even though the footprint on the houses are the same. And so this was the rendering of what the houses would look like by the student who designed them. These are our first two houses just before we had our first open house. And these are some of the students from Tenants Career Center in the orange shirts and hats coming out of the house. Lowe's was a major sponsor. Lowe's national program called 100 Hometowns gave us enough money to fund a house plus a our ability to purchase a gas station that we're turning into a tool library, which I'll talk about later. This is the house, the first house with the cabinets going in. And this was the house, the way it, both houses, the way they looked on the open house the first day we showed them to the community. You can see that the porches have roofs over them so that they have shade in the summer, and also could sit out on a rainy day if it was warm enough. This was the fully furnished house. This was the second house. So we furnished them a little differently so that people could see how you could set them up. And you look at that kitchen, and that's larger than some of the kitchens in traditional houses. So it has this really nice open feeling to it. And there's our bathroom. Washer, dryer, the washer on the bottom. Another view of the two houses. And this was our representative from Lowe's, who continues to work with us. Lowe's has been a great partner in this project. And this is the beginning of the next 3 houses. You can see here they're a little more complete. That's the last picture I have of those 3 houses, but they're actually further along now. That third house on the right also has siding on it now, so they're getting closer to being completed. The other part of the project was to take this old gas station that was on the corner that had been really a blight on the neighborhood for many years. It variously had used car lots in it, people who worked on cars, but it was always kind of a junky mess. And so part of the grant that we got from Lowe's was to purchase this gas station at, unfortunately, an inflated price. But it was so important for us to get it that we paid it. And we've been working on it now for quite some time. It was really in pretty bad shape. But here's more or less what it looks like right now. We're not done with it yet, but it's already improved the appearance of the neighborhood significantly. One of the things we've noticed is since we started this project, all of a sudden, several buildings in the immediate vicinity on Monroe Street are starting to see some renovation going on. And perhaps the work that we're doing encourage some others to get involved and try to redevelop Monroe Street in this area. The idea of the tool library, and there are a number of these across the country. In fact, we did a study of tool libraries to kind of learn best practices, is that it works just like a public library, except it's for tools. And people can come in and borrow the tools that they need to do projects around their house, and that saves them the cost of buying or renting tools. And we hope to have this operational sometime next year. Right now, it's very helpful to us because we do a lot of staging of materials and some construction actually in the garage, and then take it over to the houses. So that's kind of my formal presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Just take a second to answer the poll and then also enter any questions in the Q&A.
Maybe helpful, Larry, while maybe folks are trying to enter a question, I'm just curious, what were some of the, maybe the biggest challenges you had, especially with making sure everything was accessible? What would you say would, the biggest hurdles you had to overcome to achieve that?
Yeah, truthfully, if you start out with the idea that you're going to make it accessible, it's not that tough. You just build it into your process. I think the shower is the biggest issue. We're going to, on our 6th house, we're going to try a prefab shower rather than the showers that we got that are tiled in, and we have to slope the concrete floor and things like that. So the shower was tricky. But other than that, I don't think it's that difficult.
Pastor Clark, this is Marie Flannery from the Fair Housing Center. I've been a fan of the tiny homes ever since I first heard about them. You and I met about this, gosh, it was like back in 2019,
Right.
because I know it was pre-COVID, and we were still at our other location. And so I'm incredibly excited that, you're getting ready, you're on your 6th home. This is amazing. And I love the results that you're seeing. And I'm really excited about the tool library. So is that going to be open to the public?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Like anybody could come and check out a
Right.
tool? Okay, because I need a Sawzall. So
Yeah.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Well, I need to say the Fair Housing Center was really important in our process. We met with you, Marie, and we wanted to make sure we were doing everything right. And those couple of times we met were very helpful in drawing up our lease and all that process to make sure we did it right.
Yeah. Well, having different types of affordable housing options, obviously this type of home isn't going to be for everybody, but it's an option for a lot of people. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing that you're doing. And it's wonderful to see that neighborhood. I drive past it every day on my way to and from work. And it's just wonderful to see that neighborhood. I periodically drive through just to see the progress that you're making. And I see the backs of the homes and that gas station. And so periodically I'll just drive through the neighborhood to see what's up. So wonderful job, wonderful job.
Yeah. And we met with tremendous skepticism for this project. I mean, it took just everybody we met with told us why it wouldn't work and why it was not a good idea. it was amazing how much opposition there was. And the idea that nobody would live in these houses and that kind of thing. We have so many applications, we'll never be able to satisfy the need or the desire to live in these houses. 20 houses doesn't begin to meet the
demand.
Number of people that are applying.
Well, it'll be a good model. Maybe it's something we can replicate because we don't lack for neighborhoods that have a need for some infill development. Let's put it that way. So what, other than with the skepticism that you faced, what were some of the things that were any of those things, did they pan out in your experience? As far as the things that folks said, oh, this isn't going to work because or did it all work out the way you thought it would?
Yeah, none of the things that people had skepticism about turned out to be a problem. COVID turned out to be a problem.
Well,
And prices went up dramatically on building materials, and
right.
we ran into issues with sewer lines and things like that, but that's all construction
Always
related.
construction
Yeah,
related. Yeah.
yeah, and it was not about the skepticism that we ran into in the beginning.
Well, it looks like we have some questions, so I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
Yes, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A, and we are going to read those off for Dr. Clark. And just, I agree with Marie. I am also very excited about this project. Obviously, we gave you guys an award, and I love, like I have mentioned to you before, that you mentioned that this will be the first fully accessible block in Toledo. So we have a question from Valerie Fatica. What's the parking situation for homeowners?
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks for raising that. We modeled our project after a tiny home project in Detroit by Cass Community Tiny Homes. And their houses are not accessible, and they do not have parking. We thought we should provide parking, even though our guess is that most of our folks will not have cars. And one of the advantages we have by our location is that the bus stop for bus 2 on Monroe Street is just, a few steps away from their houses. So they've got access to the biggest bus line in the city. So that I think is a real advantage to our location. We have put in parking pads in the back of the houses off of the alley. We've got a good alley. It's a paved alley. And so if they've got visitors, our residents, our first two residents in our first 2 houses do not have vehicles, but sometimes they do have a guest or something. So they got the option of parking either out of the street in front, or they can pull in back and park behind the house.
Great. And then the second question is, are the homes ADA compliant or simply accessible? So is there a difference between, the standards under the ADA and then the way that the houses are designed?
We haven't had them formally, I guess, looked at to see if they're totally ADA compliant. I think they are. We've tried to make sure that we've done everything to make them compliant. We didn't put in bars, for example, in the bathroom, but we put in the blocking in the wall so that if they need to put bars in, like around the toilet and that kind of thing, it can be done.
But doesn't the ADA apply to public spaces rather than homes, private spaces? Isn't there a distinction there? Katie?
I don't know the answer to that.
But I wasn't asking you, Larry.
The ADA applies only to housing created with public funding. So like housing that's created by a local government, for example.
Right.
But it wouldn't apply to single family homes.
Right. So I think what applies in this case is the fair housing design and construction requirements, which meaning that, and from what I could tell just from looking at it, it looked like those requirements were met, but obviously I can't speak to it from a legal perspective. But yeah, with putting the supports in so that if someone needed to add grab bars, things like that, and that accessible entrance, etc.
And the doors, there's only
The
one
width of the
interior door, and
doors.
that door is 36 inches wide.
Yeah. Katie and George are really the experts here.
Well, I'm not.
I know
so
just
have to
enough
go-
to be dangerous.
legally, I'd have to take a closer look, I think, at the village. The Fair Housing Act might not even apply in this situation in terms of having, legal regulations. And that's why a lot of folks creating single family homes, and that include accessibility that's something that we're really trying to promote. The Fair Housing
exactly.
Act applies to 4 or more connected units.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it's wonderful that care was taken in this case to make these homes accessible.
And I like that, the point that you made, it really wasn't that difficult, and they're beautiful looking houses. So we really appreciated working with you on that. Okay. Other than the grant from Lowe's, how did you raise funds or receive additional grants?
So the initial money came primarily from 2 churches, Monroe Street United Methodist and Sylvania United Methodist. Both contributed significant amounts of money to enable the first 2 houses to be built. What we realized was that, until we built some houses, it was going to be tough to get any funding. So we had to prove we could do it. Part of the skepticism was, how can a small neighborhood center take on a project like this? And because of the failure of most of the community development corporations, that also factored into this skepticism. So that was the initial money, the Lowe's money. And then most of the money, quite frankly, has come from individuals. Small gifts of $10,000. One individual gave $90,000, just believed in the project. So that's been the biggest share is money just from individuals. We've gotten a couple grants. We got a couple other grants out there. We got a home funds grant. And so it's been a combination of lots of different things. And money's coming a little bit faster now, now that we've proved ourselves. One thing I don't think I explained is that the residents pay $400 a month rent, but that doesn't go at all to construction. That simply is to pay the water bill, miscellaneous repairs that need to be made, the housing manager. And one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that we had money set aside, that if anything comes up, we've got that money for it. So the people are living there, their rent really doesn't pay for the house. It just pays for our ability to manage and keep the project going.
Do you have any tenants in the finished houses yet? And if so, how are the houses working for them?
The first 2 houses have residents. The first house has an older couple, and the second house has a gentleman who is legally blind. Both houses, the residents are very pleased with their places. The one resident refers to his house as a palace. So, from wherever he'd been living before, this was really a step up. And we work with them pretty much all the time. And because of the location, they have access to the food pantry, and that can help out as well with making ends meet.
The next question is, when do you expect to have tenants? And it sounds like you do. So I think maybe can you talk a little bit more about the process of getting folks into the homes? Are the homes built only after you have a tenant, or are you building them as you go and then recruiting folks to live there?
So we've been accepting applications for the last year. We've got a very large stack of applications, We have a committee that will be going through these applications. In fact, they'll be getting right now because we'll have House 3 ready probably either December 1 or January 1. That house will be available. And the selection committee will go through and check out a number of things, make sure they've got some income, check with their previous landlord. One of the problems is they've got to have a lease coming up at the right time to get out from under it to move into the new place. And sometimes, we found that with the first two, that there's some folks that were simply eliminated because they had a lease that they were under that they couldn't get out of. And one of our tenants is going to be on the selection committee so that he has some say about who his neighbor is.
Next question, as the neighborhood grows, do you see the development of a community grocery store? And then this person commented, these houses are just darling and very charming.
Thank you. When we did our master plan and did our door-to-door survey, everybody listed grocery store as an issue. Some of you may be aware that on the corner of Auburn and Monroe Street, a couple of years ago, General Dollar built a brand new building, and then in less than a year later closed it and moved out. And so we've got an extra abandoned building on our street. It's a nice looking building. I would love to see somebody put a grocery store in there. There used to be a grocery store at Swain Field, and lots of people in the neighborhood were using that. That grocery closed. So the nearest grocery we have is Kroger at Monroe and Secor. That is accessible by bus, but it's not a neighborhood grocery.
Okay, the next one is from Kara Jennings. It's great to have the washer and dryer. It appears the dryer would be hard to access for a person using a wheelchair. Is there a way around that?
Yeah, when we talked about that, it is not accessible for somebody in a wheelchair, and they may have to hang their clothes or something. We looked at the combo units that were washer dryer all together. What we found out is the reliability on them is not good. And so we went with the decision to make sure we had a good washer, and it may be that folks will not be able to access the dryer. And that's unfortunate. The problem is the space limitations. There was no way to put washer dryer side by side without really knocking out a lot of living space. So that was a compromise that was made. It is possible if someone moves in that is in a wheelchair that we could go with one of the combo units. But for those who don't need that, this is a better option. But we certainly are going to work with our tenants to make sure that they have what they need. In Europe, they use the combo washer dryer a lot, and they must be better than the ones that are here in the US, because we've heard nothing but problems with them.
Next question. Do you provide community hours, or do residents find and locate those opportunities?
We work with them. I mean, they could volunteer at the food pantry. They could do some stuff right here on site. But if they've got something else they want to do, our one tenant, he mows the lawn for both himself and his neighbor. So we'll work that out individually with each resident.
And then what is discussed or done at their monthly meetings?
Could you repeat it again?
What is discussed or done at the monthly community meetings?
Since we've only got two occupied houses, we really haven't had these tenant association meetings. But when we get more residents, then we'll begin having them. The idea is that they talk about you know, what's working, what's not working, how they can, we want them to know each other, to build a sense of community. We also hope in the middle of the block, put in a little park where folks could go and sit. Again, we're trying to do all the things we can to make community. One of the things we're hoping for is that we can get sidewalk level lighting rather than street level lighting. It makes a whole different feel for a neighborhood. Rather than creating lighting for cars, you create lighting for people who are walking. So that's one of the things we're looking for down the road. And the Tenants Association would have some say about whether they wanted that or not.
Do you think that these will be long-term tenants, or are you expecting that the houses will turn over?
Well, if they stay the 7 years, they become homeowners, and there's an incentive to stay. If they leave before the 7 years, they'll just have been a renter, and the process will start over again. One of the things, you know, that's part of the selection process. Do you plan on staying 7 years? Because we really want to see some homeowners. And once they become a homeowner, of course, they can sell their home. Well, we've got a deed restriction that'll be on it that says it has to be a owner occupier. We don't want any more rental units. Our neighborhood has become, I think it's over 60% rentals now. And the typical pattern in our neighborhood is that homeowner is an elderly person who dies. Somebody buys it to rent it out, and they rent it until the place is so run down, and then they abandon it. And so we've got huge holes in our neighborhood where houses once existed. And we've got some houses that people are living in that just, you know, I wonder how that's even habitable. So we really want to see homeowners and stakeholders in our community.
And that's the end of the questions. Marie, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask? You're on mute. All right. Well, I think with that, if there are any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you with Larry. And otherwise, this is the final session of our seminar. And we hope that it met the goal of our challenge to our community to discuss the issue of housing for folks with disabilities and learn about it and develop community solutions. And I think Marie and George Thomas also wanted to wrap it up as our co-sponsor from the Fair Housing Center.
Can I just put a final word in and say thank you again so much for the Abilities Center's recognition of Bluff Street. It was really special for us to have that recognition. You can follow along our progress either on our website, which is just bluffstreetvillage.org. We do also have a Bluff Street Facebook page. We try to put up pictures of progress along the way. So those are ways to keep involved, and we're always looking for contributors. So if you want to join us in this project, we'd love to have you.
Thank you. Again, we are really excited that you worked with us to create the first fully accessible block in Toledo. It's often difficult for folks with disabilities to find single-family homes that are accessible because those regulations aren't there. We had actually our panel yesterday talked quite a bit about the difficulty in finding accessible homes. We love to work with organizations like yours that are so open to making those changes and creating more accessibility in our community. So thank you Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I found the unmute button. I'm so sorry. I had a technological glitch there. George,
Happens to the best of us.
I am down here and there's all these buttons and I could not find the one that, anyway. George, did you have anything before I close us out?
No, just thanks again. It was a great seminar this year. I hope maybe next year we'll be back in person. We'll see, but we'll see what happens next year for the ADA seminar. We're just happy to help out with this one.
Yes, absolutely. And I just wanted to say that the Fair Housing Center, we are honored to co-sponsor this seminar and partner with the Ability Center. We value our partnership with the Ability Center. Part of our core mission as a fair housing organization is to not only ensure compliance with fair housing laws, but also to educate the community about fair housing rights and responsibility. When our community is better informed about the protections that exist for people with disabilities, then we can prevent discrimination from happening in the first place. So thank you to everyone who attended this seminar and learned about the steps that we can all take to ensure that everyone in our community can find housing that meets their needs. Thank you to Pastor Clark and all of your work on Bluff Street Village. I applaud you and your tenacity to make this project happen. Thank you again to the Ability Center for your partnership. We look forward to continuing to work with you to remove barriers to accessibility so that our community can continue on a path to inclusivity and be a welcoming place for everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Marie and George. And I've enjoyed co-hosting the seminar this year with the Fair Housing Center. And I know we've been excited about all the information shared by all of our webinars and all of our panelists. I hope it's helpful to our community. I dropped the link for Bluff Street Village in the chat. Follow it and contribute if I'm allowed to say that. Thanks to everybody for attending. And thank you to our speakers. We'll see you guys next year, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.